I'd like to tell everybody to dream big and to believe, because dreams do come true. And today, I'm very humbled that one of my dreams has come true.
Watson takes a snap, rolls right, looks into the end zone. Hunter up the caught it! Touchdown! 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 With a second left.
It's intercepted, and the Tigers are going the other way. A.J. Terrell with a pick six.
Lawrence took a peek downfield, had a lot of room, and breaks the tackle, and is still running. Lawrence in a foot race. Will they catch him? Touchdown, Tigers!
Booker.
Shot. Chase Hunter tries to the shoot. He's back, and it goes! Chase Hunter! And one!
Pitch. And this one hammered high, deep to right, way back, and out of here! A grand slam! Seth Beer!
He's in the lineup, but he has been a game changer. This one's out to center field. It is deep. It is caught! Oh, my goodness!
Welcome back to the Walk On Podcast, where we talk all things Clemson sports while examining the landscape of college and professional sports. But today, it's just me, JT. He had some scheduling issues. Again, couldn't make it. We'll get him back next week. But just for myself, starting off, we got Clemson basketball. Clemson basketball is still in town for right now before they go to Boise on Sunday. They had Eastern Kentucky yesterday. I was at that game. Unfortunately, JT also couldn't make it to that game. But Clemson, you kind of saw a little bit of struggle during this game that we haven't seen yet from the Tigers this season. Eastern Kentucky, I want to throw all the credit their way. The Eastern Kentucky Colonels, they were the ASUN regular season champions last year. Unfortunately, they got bounced in their first game of the tournament, did not have an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. And they were kind of gutted in the portal. They lost a bunch of guys at graduation, and they had some future stars that they thought would come back and carry their program the next season, this year. But the portal kind of took them away. But they're led by fifth-year senior Devontae Blanton, who dropped 23 on the Tigers, shooting 10 from 15 from the field. This guy was an absolute stud. I want to give all credit to Eastern Kentucky for walking into LeJohn and giving Clemson a fight. Clemson was only up by 6 at halftime, and really only by 6 because they hit a miracle last-second three from about the half-court line to put them up by that much. But, Clemson, you saw some struggle from them. This was the biggest team they've faced all year, and, they didn't rebound all too well. Offensively, the offensive rebounds are great, but defensively, they gave up 13 offensive rebounds to Eastern Kentucky, which you just don't want to see that. Ian Shefflin, he struggled with fouls all game, so he wasn't on the court as much as he probably should have been. But the Tigers, they kind of got lucky. Eastern Kentucky, they only shot 24% from the three, and Clemson also only shooting 28%. But if Eastern Kentucky, if that number was anywhere above 30, this game might have been a little bit closer. But just late, Eastern Kentucky had some bad turnovers late, mixed with, I believe Clemson had 12 straight defensive stops after getting down 54-50. That kind of put this game away. But you saw some struggle and some fight in the Tigers. It makes you feel a little bit better that you've seen them down and see if they can fight now. But huge task coming up against Boise. If you want more on that, look on the Walk On blog. That's www.the-walk-on.com. Boise, they're a much bigger team. They play everybody. Everybody that plays for them is probably most likely above 6'7", except for maybe their point guard. But everybody else is big. It'll be interesting to see how Clemson faces that. But moving on, we got Clemson football again this week. Thank God they won this past weekend at Virginia Tech. They're still in the hunt. They still have some, with Miami losing at Georgia Tech, some ACC chaos. Clemson is still, it's likely, not likely, but there's still a chance for Clemson to make ACC championship game and potentially get to the playoff past that point. But looking at Pitt, Clemson's defense, they're still going to be missing some guys. You're probably going to get Peter Woods back, but he's probably the only one you get back. Capehart's probably done till at least South Carolina, maybe even. He might not even be back for that game. Shelton Lewis, backup cornerback, nickel guy. He's done for the year. But with Peter Woods back, maybe the defensive line, they can continue their dominant run game performance that they had. But Pitt doesn't really dive into the run game like Virginia Tech, like we thought Virginia Tech would. They're more focused on the pass game. They like to throw it. Their running back, he's top 5 in the country in all-purpose yards, and he's heavily involved in their pass game. I believe he's almost caught the most passes on their team. I believe he's second in receptions. And their quarterback, Eli Holstein, transferred from Alabama, redshirt freshman. He's a dude, 6'4", 225. He can take some hits, but he left the game early against Virginia this past week, and we'll see how healthy he is this week. You know, his availability doesn't have to be made available in the ACC, so you probably won't know if he's playing until the day of the game. But from all I see, he's probably going to play. You know, it's a big game for Pitt. They're coming off 2 losses. He was unable to help them come back last week against UVA because of an injury. I don't see a world where he doesn't play here. This is a huge game for him to get their season back on track. Possibility to get a ranked win, and to propel themselves back into the top 25 after 2 poor weeks. But I would expect Holstein to play, and they're gonna prepare for Holstein. Kind of like this past week, we didn't know if Kyron Jones, a Virginia Tech quarterback, or their running back Tootin was gonna play, but both of them lined up. Clemson was prepared for them. They were prepared for the backup. You know, Clemson they kind of showed a different side last week. But looking into Pitt, you got defense. Pitt's defense they like to fly around. They're hard-nosed. They stop the run. They rank 20th in the country in rushing yards given up per game. They're top 20 in interceptions, and they're top 5 in sacks per game. Now, while all those add up, they still don't stop the pass all too well. If their pass rush does not get home and they don't get picks, their coverage isn't great. But it'll be interesting to see how Clemson does that. You know, we kind of saw them struggle in the passing game last week, a little bit in the first half. You know, they kind of turned it on in the second half, but you saw some drops. You don't want to see that. But you did see some drops. You saw some questionable decisions from Klubnik. And the O-line gave up 4 sacks. Dabo said in his press conference that all 4 of those sacks were on Cade, but I don't really know if I believe that. You know, Dabo loves to blame a quarterback for taking a sack, especially Cade. He does it all the time. But I don't know. Watching that game, it just felt like the O-line was giving up a good amount of pressure to start the game, especially. They got better as the game went on. But Pitt's, they're no slouch, man. They got really good linebackers, and their linebackers is really what bolsters their defense. Their linebackers, they have most of the interceptions, they have most of the sacks. I mean, be on the lookout. Pitt's intermediate defenders, they will determine this game. If Clemson's offense turns the ball over to these intermediate defenders, then I don't see a world where Clemson wins. But Clemson, you know, they've been one of the better teams this season in protecting the football. Cade had a pick last week, but it was kind of just like an arm punt, you know, you'd say. You know, he kind of just threw it up, getting pressured from the backside, threw it up to Bringenstool. He got a hand on it, didn't come down with it. Arm punt, they get the ball on the 12-yard line or whatever it was. Didn't really hurt us. But Pitt's defense, they've gotten better from last season. You know, they're coming off a 3-9 year, so it's great that they're already sitting at 7-2 if you're sitting in the Pitt locker room. But they're still not satisfied. I mean, they lose. Their defense was most likely the reason. Was the reason they were 3-9 last season. And their improvement has helped them get to the 7-2 record in these close games that they've had to win. But if they're able to create pressure like they're able to normally, like they have been able to throughout the season, then it's going to be hard for Clemson to win this game. I just want to get some keys for some Tiger victories. You know, as hinted on, you can most likely guess it's not throwing picks. And that doesn't just fall on Cade Klubnik like the normal fan would think. That's the wide receivers. You can't drop the ball. You got to catch the right passes. We can't have 4+ drops again in back-to-back weeks. It's on the O-line. The O-lines, they got to give him the time and protection and sight to be able to, for Cade to be able to make the right read and give him the time. Moving on, I got 3+ sacks. We haven't seen this really from the Tiger front seven all year. Had one sack last week, and surprisingly, they're one of the worst teams in the country in sacking the opposing quarterback. And that doesn't even sound like a Clemson stat when I'm saying it out loud. But Clemson, they got to step up, man. Hopefully you get Peter Woods back. He'll help. He takes up a lot of attention. But my eyes really shift to the linebackers because we've kind of seen all year that the defensive line hasn't created pressure by themselves, and that's not just going to change magically in 1 week. But you have to get to Holstein, and I believe it needs to be put on the linebacker's shoulders. Clemson played a 3-linebacker set for the majority of the Virginia Tech game for the first time all season long because of lack of concerns in the linebacker depth that they have because of injuries to Kobe McLeod and just unproven players behind Barrett Carter and Wade Woodaz. But Sammy Brown, he got the notch at the Mike spot this past weekend, and he played great. Led the team in tackles, sacks, and TFLs. Now, somebody asked Dabo in his press conference, hey, Sammy, will we see Sammy run out there first again this week? And still Dabo was hesitant. He didn't really know. He was like, well, Pitt they run a bunch of 4 receiver sets, so it's hard to play 3 linebackers when the other team's so fast with all these receivers. But I don't really understand that because we saw Clemson's defense run out 2 linebackers all year long and struggle. So once you see it with 3 linebackers out there and you don't struggle, I don't understand how you're going to go back to 2 linebacker sets. But we'll see. We will see how that goes. But I'm telling you, if they don't run out Sammy Brown as that 3rd linebacker to start the game and for probably at least 85% of the snap share, then I don't think Clemson's not going to win this game because it's going to be Sammy Brown, it's going to be Wade Woodaz, it's going to be Barrett Carter that get these sacks and put the pressure on Eli Holstein, especially if he's hurt. It's important to put pressure on him if he's hurt because he's hesitant, he's worried, and he likes to run the football too. He's their second best rusher. They don't really have a backup running back. So, putting the pressure on him will make him hesitant to run the football, and getting to him will disrupt their offense. Especially in a road game, it's important to disrupt the opponent's offense early. 3rd key, got heart, man. Clemson's got to have heart. They played with heart for the last weekend for like the first time I've seen all season. They wanted it more. You're not at home. The crowd's not fueling you. It's just you and your brothers sitting there, and you have to want it more than the other team when you're playing in a stadium that's lit and it's got 70,000 fans cheering for the opposing roster. Clemson just wanted it, man. They had 7 missing starters, and injuries suck, but they happen, and you got to be next man up, and that's what I saw from Clemson last week. We have to see it again because these injuries haven't gone away. They're still here. There's still concerns. Clemson's got to put that together to be able to win this football game. They have to. This heart has put them in a position to where the AC championship is still on the line. And if you win this game, then you're kind of sitting back and just waiting. And I'll get into that in a second after I get into my prediction for this game. We'll move to the ACC and there's some chaos happening. But they have to show heart. They have to show some heart to beat Pittsburgh on Saturday. Sorry, guys. Just bear with me. I'm still getting over this sickness a little bit. But moving on to my prediction for this game. Last week, for the first time since Georgia, I predicted Clemson to lose. And if JT was here, he'd be rubbing it all in my face that I did predict them to lose and they won. But I'm glad they won. Don't get me wrong. I don't want Clemson to lose. This is a Clemson-oriented podcast, if you can't tell. But I think this week, I got the Tigers winning 31-20 in a close game. It's going to come down to whoever wants it more. And I think Clemson's got too much on the line to let it go here. They have too much on the line. And JT actually sent me his predictions too. So I'll get to his. JT thinks Clemson wins this game 28-16. Now I kind of like, our scores are kind of same. They're off by a total of 7 points total. JT thinks it's also going to be a statement win for the Tigers. And JT thinks turnovers is going to be a big factor in this game. He might be right with the injury to Holstein But he also could be right. If Clemson turns the ball over, it'll be an important factor going the other way in Pitt's favor. So I like the way JT's thinking about this game. And moving on, we got staying in the ACC, though. As mentioned on the review, Miami's leaving the door open for Clemson, man. They're on a bye this week. So, you Clemson fans, you can chill out. You ain't gotta put your heart and soul in watching Miami games, hoping they're losing this week. But losing to Georgia Tech on the road, not even just losing to Georgia Tech, they got dominated by Georgia Tech. By Haynes King, who could not throw the football. Dominated. And the ACC, with their loss, the ACC, I believe, has turned into a one-bid league. What that means is the only one ACC team will make the playoff, I believe, especially with all the chaos we got going on in the SEC as well. But Miami's, there's a crack. There's a crack in that door, or in the window to get an ACC title game right now for Clemson, which Miami opened. And if they drop another one, and if Clemson wins this weekend, Clemson's in the ACC championship game with an opportunity to go to their first ever 12-team playoff. But it's also going to be difficult because you got SMU. SMU looks great. They played Boston College this week. We'll get picks on that game later, I believe. Yeah, we got picks on that game later. But SMU, I don't think they're really going to struggle. They look more dominant than Miami does. They have a better loss than Miami does, which is why I was confused about the college football playoff rankings that came on last night and released. And Miami was ranked number 9 overall, and SMU's 14th, even though they play in the same conference. They both have one loss, but SMU's loss is by 3 to BYU, and Miami's is by 5 to Georgia Tech, who's just like a mediocre football team. And it was a Georgia Tech team that had Haynes King that could not throw the football as well. It was just weird to me. I mean, that's more brand bias than you can get. I think SMU has the resume, I believe, to be a top 7 team right now. And they should definitely be projected to win the ACC as it stands. But Miami's leaving the door open. But Clemson's got to get Clemson's got to do their work first. And it's disappointing because we were gonna see the Orange Britches this weekend if Clemson didn't drop a home night game to Louisville. But we have to wait. We have to wait a couple weeks to see the Orange Britches. It's unfortunate. I always loved the Orange Britches. I always loved the white on the orange, especially. One of my favorite combinations in the Dabo era. Moving on, we got the SEC. Georgia losing to Ole Miss has created so much chaos within the SEC that there's an opportunity for the SEC to finish with 6, 7, 2-loss teams within their conference, and then you don't know who's making the playoffs or who's making the conference championship game. I mean, it's all up in the air. Now, Georgia does have Tennessee this week, and if Georgia beats Tennessee, then that gives Tennessee their second conference loss, and that adds just another 2-loss team to the SEC. And you'd think LSU's gone. You'd think they're no longer a concern, that they're out of the playoff. But listening to the On 3, Ari and sorry about that, wrong podcast. Listening to the Crane and Company podcast, I learned this morning that LSU still has an opportunity to make the SEC championship game. And it's not even that far-fetched. Georgia obviously has to beat Tennessee. And then it doesn't matter what happens with Texas and Texas A&M. And then Arkansas has to beat Missouri. If all that happens, or if those two things just happen, if Arkansas beats Missouri and Georgia beats Tennessee and it goes down, you would have a 5 or 6 team 2-loss tiebreaker in the SEC standings to see who goes and is that team to play the winner of Texas and Texas A&M, assuming everybody else wins out. LSU wins that tiebreaker, guys. Because the tiebreaker, it goes down to the fourth option. So I've heard. It goes down to the conference opponent winning percentage. And because LSU did not play Mississippi State, they did not play Kentucky. Those teams are 1-11 combined in the conference. And they did not play Auburn, who's I believe is 1-5 in the conference. LSU wins that percentage, and they win it by a pretty good margin. I mean, imagine the outrage within an Alabama fan base, a Georgia fan base. I guess Ole Miss can't be outraged because they lost to LSU. But especially Alabama. Imagine the outrage Bama fans would have if LSU still made the SEC championship game and won the SEC championship game. There's so much disaster situations that could happen with this playoff. It's incredible. People that did not want to go to the 12-team playoff, I believe they're crazy. The 12-team playoff is I don't want to say it's the best thing. I think it's better than the 14 playoff already. I haven't even seen it play out, but all these scenarios is great. Clemson would already be done, like I had mentioned, but they still have an outside shot. I mean, it's great. And Ole Miss got ranked last night within the playoff. Georgia got left out. Georgia was the first team out because of because of Boise being ranked 13th. They got pushed up over Georgia, who's ranked 12th. But I like seeing Ole Miss in there. Ole Miss wins out, they're in. Assumingly, if Bama wins out, they're in. Georgia, if they win out, they might be in. I mean, there's so many scenarios here, and I love it. I mean, Bama's really sitting pretty, and so is Ole Miss right now, the way they're favored by the committee. But like I'm hitting on, you got Tennessee at Georgia this week. But we don't know if Nico Imaliava, we don't know if he's playing. He left their game against Mississippi State last week early, assumingly due to an upper body injury. But we've learned throughout this week that he's actually in concussion protocol. And I don't think he's going to play. Their head coach, Josh Heupel, thinks otherwise. But passing concussion protocol I don't think it's very easy, and I don't think it's kind of hard to be done within just, I don't know, if they found out he was in it in 6 days, doing it in 6 days, that's kind of difficult. But then these teams are also, you look at these two teams and they're kind of the same, with and without Nico. Offense can't move the ball. They can't. Defense is great. I mean, the defense on both sides is good. Tennessee's, I believe, has a better defense. There's some issues with explosive plays. Receiver plays down. But Georgia, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder. This is an elimination game for Georgia and LSU, if you think about it. Both of these teams need Georgia to win. And I think at home, no matter Beck's turnovers and Georgia's O-line struggles, I was going to pick Tennessee walking into this room, but I've changed my mind. Nico, not going to play. This game's not going to wow you. It's not going to be a fun one to watch, I don't think. It's going to be more like the Ohio State Penn State game. Both teams they're going to pound the ground game. But if Nico doesn't play, then it's going to come down to the throws that Carson Beck can make that the Tennessee backup cannot. I think Georgia's going to win this game. And I think they win it in a close-scoring affair. I think the under is a great bet here. Especially, I believe I took it at 47.5. If it got to about 42, then I would think about it. But right now, the under is a great bet. My man JT, who's not here, he's also got Georgia winning. And we'll see how all this SEC chaos plays out. Moving on, you got the Big Ten. And I'm sitting here and thinking about the playoff last night. The committee, they have 4 of the top 5 teams ranked-wise, not seeded-wise, are from the Big Ten. You know, they're favoring the Big Ten right now, which kind of shocks me. But, you know, you have to when you have 2 undefeated teams and 2 one-loss teams. But it's possible that one of these teams, Indiana, Penn State, maybe even Ohio State, if they lose to Indiana, one of them might get screwed over by one of those SEC teams with 2 losses. Like I have in my notes here, does Indiana and Penn with 1 loss get jumped by an SEC team with 2? It's very possible. I mean, think about it this way. Think about Bama. Think if Bama won out and Indiana lost to Ohio State. We'll say they lose by 14 or so points at home. Or no, on the roads, excuse me. Does Bama jump Indiana? Indiana doesn't have any good wins. I was wrong on the podcast a couple weeks ago saying Indiana hadn't played any AP voted teams before Michigan. They played Nebraska, so excuse me for that one. Sorry. Twitter lied to me. But, I mean, they don't have any good wins. Is Nebraska their best win? It's the same thing with Penn State. Penn State's got a little bit of a better schedule. Beating Illinois. But they beat them at home, and they barely beat them. This is an Illinois team that's turned around and lost to Minnesota. They got blown out by Oregon. I mean, these Big Ten teams, they don't have any good wins. And it's really just because the Big Ten's not looked at like the SEC. I mean, these SEC teams, are we still looking at Missouri as a good win? Because they're still ranked somehow. Is Missouri a good win? Because if so, Vandy should have a great loss. Because Vandy lost to them by 3 on the road. Should have made a kick to beat them. So it's just the way all these conferences are perceived. It's like the ACC. That's why the ACC is going to be a one-bid league. Because even though the ACC has 3 top-tier teams, I would say, in my opinion, I think these 3 top 10 teams from the ACC, Clemson, Miami, SMU, I think they all could compete with a Bama maybe this year. And definitely with a LSU. I think they could compete with a Penn State. Maybe even a Texas. Texas hasn't played anybody. But I think the Big Ten has an SEC issue. Just like the ACC does. It's all about perception. And my question is when is this perception going to change? When is the SEC not going to be seen as the great conference that people think it is? Because they're gonna get a chance to prove it in the playoff this year if they get 4 2-loss teams in there, and 3 out of 4 of them lose in the first round. I don't really care. I don't care about home and away. If you lose, you lose. Better team's gonna win. But moving on from getting angry about the Big Ten, I like the Big Ten. I just want to put it out there. I'm a Big Ten guy. Moving on to Big 12. Colorado, their hopes are still alive. They look like they're in the driver's seat to make the Big 12 championship game and face BYU. They have Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas left, I believe. All 3 of those games are winnable. They're going to be favored in each and every one of those games. But we'll see how they handle Utah today, who's coming off of a close game at home against BYU, a game that many thought they should have won. They didn't, but they maybe should have. Came down to a last-second field goal. Anything can happen. But the Big 12, I'm asking the same question as the Big 12. They're looking like they're going to be a one-bid league, and we kind of knew that going into the year. But what if Colorado beats BYU? Does the committee leave BYU out for going 12-1, undefeated in the regular season, and then losing in the conference championship game to Colorado? I don't think you can leave BYU out. So I think the Big 12 has a chance to do something funny and screw over some SEC teams. But it's kind of, I mean, all these conferences are in a crash course. I think the ACC is the most likely one-bid league, out of all the conferences, in my opinion. Because I think even if SMU wins it, Miami's got 2 losses and a bad loss to Georgia Tech. I think Miami may be still in just because they're Miami. But if SMU makes it all the way to AC Championship game and loses, then they're not going to be in because they don't have the brand bias that we've seen in these playoff rankings and that we've seen in college football the past couple of years. Danny Cornell of CBS, he's tired of the brand bias. He's hating on Texas. And he brought up a point. I know we're not on AC or the big SEC right now, but he brought up a point that SMU's got a better resume than Texas does. They both have one loss. Both of their losses at home. Both of their losses are to top 15 teams. Yet SMU has a top 25 win, but Texas doesn't. Texas's best win is at Vanderbilt, and they're the third-ranked team in the country, even though they got dominated at home by Georgia, and that loss is getting worse and worse, especially if they lose this week. Yet SMU's not even inside the playoff right now. All this is sort of ridiculous to me. But brand bias does exist. In Colorado, they got a big brand bias now. But they're not going to get in at large. And their hopes, back to the Big 12, their hopes lie in the championship game if they can beat BYU. But does BYU, I'll continue to pose this question to the audience. Does BYU get in with one loss? I don't know. I think they should, but the way the committee's treating them, I believe they have them up at 6 this week. 7, excuse me, sorry. They have them at 7 overall. So maybe they do, but it'll be hard. But just some more reactions to the playoff rankings. I kind of hinted at it when I was going at Texas and the SMU. I don't think Texas should be 3. 1 and 2 is obviously right. Oregon, Ohio State. Penn State at 4, I don't understand that. They have a loss at home by 7. Excuse me, sorry guys. They have a loss at home by 7 to Ohio State. They couldn't move the football at home. It was almost as if they were on the road and had stadium pulse on and couldn't move it. You got quarterback's hand shaking in the backfield. They shouldn't be 4. Indiana should probably be 4. They're 10-0. The second only 10-0 team in the country. I think they deserve it. Even after they struggle against Michigan, I talked about this on the review. One game struggling does not mean you're a bad team. Especially if you won all the other games, blowing them out. Tennessee at 6, I like BYU at 7. Notre Dame at 8, I like. People are hating on it because they lost to the MAC school in Northern Illinois. But they've been, I believe that loss came in week 2. And they've been blowing people out since. And they'll have their opportunity against a hard-ranked team coming up against Army. So we'll see how that goes. But I think Notre Dame, they've earned it. They've earned their spot. And I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong rankings here, guys. BYU's at 6. Tennessee at 7. I like that. Notre Dame at 8. Like. Miami 9. Do not like it. I believe Miami was, I think they were 4 or 5 last week. And then they go on the road at Bobby Dodd. You know, notoriously known for being a horrible stadium to play at, you know, definitely. Home crowd's insane, right? No. And they get dominated from the start, from the get-go. They get dominated by Haynes King, who could not throw the ball. I'll say it again. He could not throw the football. Dominated by Georgia Tech's 4th-string running back. They couldn't stop him. I mean, Georgia Tech, they couldn't throw the ball, and they dominated Miami. But yet Miami drops 4 spots. I want to tie this back to Clemson. If Clemson goes on the road and loses at Bobby Dodd like that, they drop to, you know, if they were 8, they dropped all the way to 23. We just saw it when they lost to Louisville at home. They dropped from 11 to 23 for getting dominated. Now, it was their second loss, but I don't think it matters. I think you can rank Miami behind some 2-loss teams. I think Miami should be behind probably all 3 of Alabama, Mississippi. I think Miami should definitely be behind SMU. I think they should be behind Boise State, and I think they should be behind Ole Miss and Alabama. Not Georgia, but I think you move Alabama. I think you switch SMU and Miami. I think SMU goes to 9, And I think you put Boise at 12. And then Miami drops to 14. I think that's a fair. Texas A&M dropped. They dropped a spot after being on a bye week. It's fair, whatever. They control their own destiny if they beat Texas. If not, they're done. Kansas State, Colorado, you see them favoring the head-to-head here. I like that. Washington State, love that they're getting some recognition in the Pac-2. They're going to be the Pac-2 champions, by the way. I don't really know how that works, but Pac-2 champs. Then you have Louisville and Clemson. 3-loss Louisville team sitting at 19, maybe. You know, I mean, the 3 losses are to all the top 15 teams. Clemson's right behind them with 2 losses. You know, they favor head-to-head. And this is where the rankings got a little confusing to me. Because we see all throughout this ranking that they favor head-to-head and they favor differential. Because they're all throughout this. But then you get down to 21 and 22, where it's South Carolina at 21 and LSU at 22. Both of these teams have 6-3 records. Okay. However, I don't know if anybody remembers this game. Maybe the playoff committee kind of forgot. But LSU did go into Williams-Brice, and they did win a football game. So why is LSU not ranked above South Carolina? I don't really understand. Now, I think this problem's going to be solved because later, you know, you got picks on LSU and Florida. Little hint at that. But this is just, I don't understand this at all. And then you have Missouri at 23. I don't think they should be ranked at all. They look horrible. They have looked horrible all year, even with Brady Cook. And they had to scrape out a win at home against Oklahoma with a scooping score. Army's at 24. They're 9-0, by the way, guys. And have dominated every opponent they've played. And I like Tulane's at 25 at 8-2. Army will have their opportunity to move up with a game against Notre Dame, so they kind of control their own destiny, you would think. But maybe not because the committee's already hating on them. So, but we'll get away from the playoff rankings. I want to get to some predictions. We got 10 total, or we have 8 more. We've already picked Clemson at Pitt and Tennessee at UGA. But starting off, we got a 12 o'clock kick, Utah at Colorado. We saw a new quarterback for Utah last week, Brandon Rice. He had a good first half against BYU. He was running. He was toting that rock. He was doing his thing, and it kind of threw BYU for a loop almost because they didn't have any film on him, and Utah kind of pulled it out of nowhere. But Utah's coming off. They've had 5 straight losses, I believe. Yeah, 5 straight losses. I mean, that's incredible to me. And I don't think it slows down. They have to go to Colorado. Air's going to be thin. Shadur Sanders, he's going to be balling out. Colorado's too talented. They're too talented to lose this game. They have too much on the line to lose this game. I'm going Colorado here, and I'm going Colorado big. My main man JT, he agrees with me here. He doesn't think it's going to be close. He uses the word demolished when he was talking to me about this game. Demolished. Moving on, we got Tulane at Navy. Tulane's kind of been JT's team all year. He's always talked about Tulane. He does his own rankings for Clemson fans on Instagram. Go give him a follow. But that's kind of his team. I hate that he's not here talking to me about this right now. But he's got Tulane in this game. He doesn't really. He didn't say too much about it. He just says Tulane's gonna beat him. He's gonna beat Navy. I believe the spread's sitting at 7 for this game currently. Navy's coming off a good win after 2 disappointing losses. They've kind of got back on track last week, beating South Florida 28-7. And it's kind of hard looking at this game because, I mean, Tulane, they've been on a tear, man. They've beat some good teams. They destroyed UAB a couple weeks, like a month ago. They beat their best win, I believe, is probably North Texas. I like that win. They just outscored them. And they've played close games with Kansas State and Oklahoma. At Oklahoma, it was at home against Kansas State. They only lost by 7 though. Excuse me. Tulane's got a good team. Their running back, he runs it all over people. Malachi Hughes, Only a sophomore, by the way, guys. He's already got 1,200 rushing yards on this season, 13 touchdowns already. And we saw this Navy defense get tore up by Notre Dame. And I think it's going to happen again. I'm on board with JT here. Navy gets right back off the track after getting on track last week. Tulane wins this game. Spread's at -7. I don't really know where to go with that one. So I would stay towards money lines for this game. Say Tulane. Then you got BC at SMU. Maybe a game you would like to see SMU drop as a Clemson fan. However, it doesn't really do much for them. Like I said, the best route for Clemson to make the title game is just by another Miami loss. But you got BC at SMU. BC's coming off a good win at home surprisingly, after benching Thomas Castellanos. And some breaking news. I don't think JT knew this when he sent me this because he's got SMU in this game, but he's got SMU close. But Thomas Castellanos is no longer with the team. He took some time off after he's got benched. And just before I walked in this room, news broke that he planned on entering the transfer portal. He would no longer be with the Boston College Eagles and Bill O'Brien. So I don't think this is really a spot for where SMU is going to lose. I mean, I was watching the Syracuse game. Their backup quarterback, he came in, did what he needed to do. Boston College backup quarterback, that is. He's 5 for 6, 51 yards and a touchdown. But he didn't really stand off the page to me. I mean, but he did what he had to do. But if they can get the run game going against SMU, they'll have a chance. Robichaux, their starting running back, he's a guy. He ran for almost 200 yards last week against Syracuse. Not promising for people who want Syracuse to beat Miami in the last week of the season, like me. But this spread opened at 16.5 in SMU's favor, obviously. Now it's sitting at 19.5 because of the news that broke about Castellanos. I'm taking SMU. They're gonna dominate them here, and I don't think it was a letdown spot, but I think it had a chance to be a letdown spot with Castellanos possibly playing. But without Castellanos, I don't think SMU has any chance. Moving on, you got LSU at Florida. This is a major letdown spot for LSU. They're still fighting for an SEC championship appearance. Like I said, they'd have the tiebreaker over the 7 2-loss teams. But you know, them players, I don't know if they know all the routes like I do. Maybe Brian Kelly does. But I think they think their playoff hopes are most likely over, and they are at large. But do they throw in the towel this week going to the Swamp? I'm going to go ahead and give you JT. JT, he called this when he caught a shot. He's going Florida's upset in LSU. He says this to me. I don't even know if he knows DJ Lagway's playing or not because we don't know. I don't even know if that's a concern to him. But LSU showed all year they've struggled stopping running quarterbacks. Marcel Reed came in, scored 5 straight scoring drives, 4 straight touchdown drives. Put that game away when they were at Kyle Field. At home at night this past weekend. Jalen Milroe runs for almost 200 yards on him. DJ Lagway, he's proven that he's a deep ball guy. He loves to throw the deep ball, but he also loves to use his legs. If Lagway plays, LSU will lose at the Swamp. Billy Napier gets a good win. However, if Lagway does not play, DJ Lagway that is, Florida doesn't have a shot. Aaron Warner, he's not the guy. He should transfer back to Yale. He's not the guy. Moving on, you got Missouri at Little Bro, USC Junior, South Carolina, whatever you want to call him. Coach Drinkwitz for Missouri, he still thinks they're in the playoff hunt. I don't know why, but he does. But they're not going to be in the playoff hunt after this week. South Carolina is now ranked above them. The spread for this game came out at 12.5. Let me get some information to see what it's sitting at now. But Drink's post-game interview, he said that they're still in the playoff hunt and repeated it a couple times. Now the spread's sitting at -12. You still don't really know if Brady Cook's playing or not. We'll probably get more information on that closer to game time. I would stay away from this spread. until you hear some information about that. But like I said, they still don't look good with Cook playing. And South Carolina, their pass rush, man, is one of the best in the country. It's better than Pitt's. And so they're in the same top 5 that I mentioned earlier about sack leaders per game. Excuse me, sorry. And they're going to get after the quarterback here. South Carolina, JT's got South Carolina beating Missouri. This shocks me. He's kind of loved Missouri all year. He loves to have them ranked for some reason. I don't really understand that, but he does. Moving on, you got Oregon at Wisconsin. This will be a quick one. I mean, we all probably know who's going to win this game. Oregon's looked dominant all year, and they've gotten better and better and better. But this one's on the road. Excuse me, and we'll see if they're able to get momentum going in Wisconsin. Tough place to play. They're favored by 14. I don't think that's enough points. That's what you saw them favored against Michigan, I believe. I would take them to cover this any day of the week. I think this game starts out slow for Oregon for the first time all year. You know, they normally start fast, but I think they start out slow this game, but then turn it up. JT's agreeing with me. Not necessarily how the game's going, but he's got Oregon stomping Wisconsin. I don't think there's an opportunity for them to lose this game. You got Cincinnati at Iowa State. Their train's completely derailed this season. Back-to-back losses, including a loss to a currently 3-6 Kansas team, a team that was 2-6 at the time that me and JT hit on. That's an upset. That was an upset spot because they're one of the most talented teams in the Big 12 despite their record. This spread opened up at -9 going Iowa State's way. It's currently, -8, excuse me, sorry. It's currently -10 going Iowa State's way. Cincinnati's coming off 2 hard losses. You know, they were kind of in contention with only 1 conference loss, but then you go to Colorado and they lose. And they lost at home to West Virginia's backup quarterback. I don't know how good Cincinnati is. I think they've kind of sold their chances here. But I think Iowa State, they get back on the tracks this week. I think they beat Cincinnati in a close one. I'd stay away from the spread. I think they beat them in a close one. You know, Sorsby, Cincinnati's quarterback. I think he plays Brendan Sorsby, not Brandon. Sorry. I believe he throws for a good many yards in this game, I bet. But Iowa State still comes out with a dub. Iowa State, they gotta get back on track. And they're really not that bad of a team. They're gritty. They were just frauds at the time, ranked 11th. But they're right back where they probably should be. And they're gonna rethink and get on track at home against Cincinnati. JT disagrees with me here. He's going Cincinnati to beat Iowa State. I don't know about that one, man. He loves to trash on Iowa State, but he was right one time. And last week, I guess, too. I can't remember if he predicted them or not, but we'll see if he's right again. And the last game before we get to some parlays, we got Kansas at BYU. Like I said just a second ago, Kansas is more talented on paper. Kansas is one of the most talented teams on paper in the Big 12. And they showed it last week, putting up 45 against Iowa State. But we'll see if they can do it again against BYU at BYU too. So it's not getting any easier. Excuse me. I think BYU's they've got some room to wiggle. They can give up a few games if they want to. But I think this is just going to be a close one. I don't think BYU's going to lose. They're favored by 2.5. Which is wild. They're barely favored in any of the games they play. But I don't think they lose. I think they got too much to care about. I think BYU wins here. I think it's close. And I don't think Kansas plays spoiled 2 weeks in a row. But I think BYU, they get it done here. I'd stay away from the game or from betting on the game because I think it's going to be a close one just like last week. JT agrees with me here. He's got BYU beating Kansas, and he's bold, but he's not that bold. He wanted to take it. I wanted to take it maybe. But neither of us did. We're staying away from that. But we got some parlays here now. I'm giving you JT's parlay here first. He's got a 6-leg for you this week. All money lines. Or not all money lines, excuse me. All spreads, which is weird coming from JT. JT's normally a money line guy. I think he wanted to mix it up this week maybe. He's got Colorado -10 against Utah. That currently sits at -11 now. I wonder if he would still take it, probably, because he thinks Colorado's going to destroy him. He's got Auburn and ULM. ULM's looked pretty bad all year, but he's got ULM covering 24.5 against Auburn. I don't know how I feel about that one. Or no, ULM's 5-4. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Louisiana. It's at Auburn. Auburn struggled. They've turned into the new Vanderbilt this year. They don't protect the football well. But he's got ULM covering 24. I could like that one. I think that one's sneaky. He's got Boston College +17.5 against SMU. It would be +19.5 now. He would probably still be more inclined to take it now that the points have went up. But Thomas Castellanos is not playing. I would stay away from that game. He's got LSU versus Florida. Florida +4.5. He's got Florida covering. He thinks Florida's going to win. Not taking Florida money line, however. He's just taking Florida to cover. I like that. He's got Oregon State -3.5 versus Air Force. I like that. Air Force kind of been struggling all year. So is Oregon State. But Oregon State, they got a statement win here. They got to represent from the Pac-12. Can't lose to a Mountain West school for, I would think, the 5th time this season. That's incredible. Or no, excuse me. They've lost to 3 Mountain West schools. This would be the 4th time they would lose to one. I think they get back on track. I think they cover here. I like that pick. As long as they don't turn the ball over. They can't turn the ball over against the Air Force Falcons. And he's got Cincy +9 versus Iowa State. I like that one too. I love that one. And let's get to my parlay. I got a 5-leg for y'all right before we get out of here. I got Florida money line. See, I'm going all in, getting the dog odds +150. I like Florida here, man. It's like I said though. I take Florida to win if Lagway plays. If he does not play, I would stay away. I'd stay away from the game. I honestly would take LSU to cover if Lagway does not play. Then I got BYU money line over Kansas. I'm staying away from the BYU points, but they've done everything they've had to do to win games so far. I think they get it done again in a close one. I got Tennessee and Georgia under 49.5. It's like I said earlier, both these teams elite defenses and not so elite offenses, especially if Nico Imaliava does not play. Georgia struggled all year, and Tennessee up front, they kind of look like Ole Miss up front. If not, and they're probably better, so they're going to struggle. Now I got Missouri total score. Excuse me, sorry. Then I got Missouri total score under 19.5. There's no way they score 20 points on South Carolina's defense at South Carolina. There's no shot. I don't care who's playing quarterback. Drew Pine, Brady Cook. I don't care. Missouri under 19.5. Now I got Colorado -11 at Utah, agreeing with JT and putting it out for a 5-leg parlay. And then for one more prediction before we get out of here, you got Mike Tyson and Jake Paul on Friday on Netflix. I don't know if anybody's going to watch. I'm going to watch. I've never got to see Mike Tyson box before live, obviously, because I'm young. But I wanted to get JT thoughts on the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. He's got Jake Paul winning it in a draw, or he's got Jake Paul winning, or there being a draw. Honestly, predicting a draw might be the best outcome here. But I got Tyson. I got Tyson all the way. There's no shot Mike Tyson loses to Jake Paul. I could see it happening just because, it's Jake Paul. He doesn't fight actual boxers. But I got Mike Tyson all the way, and I hope y'all tune in Friday to that to see what's going on with Mike Tyson nowadays. But I want to thank all y'all for being here. If you want more in-depth Clemson information on sports, go check out www.the-walk-on.com. That is www.the-walk-on.com. If you want some daily Clemson content, some easier access, if you're not a website guy, go check out Clemson.fans on Instagram. Check out JT's page. Give him a follow. And if not, JT will be back next week. So you don't just have to listen for me for another week. So he'll be back, and we'll get back at it, getting the reviews and the previews ready. And we'll see y'all then.